Section 10 of Stanton White, A Romance of the New South, by Asa Zadel Hall. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 10, Plantation Life. A gentleman walked leisurely down from the house and approached us from a blossom-lined path. "How now, Uncle Boston? We have visitors, I see," he exclaimed cheerily as he came forward and extended a hand to each of us. "My name is Edson, as I suppose Uncle Boston has told you. Come right up to the piazza and have chairs in the shade. You are from the north, I presume?" "Why, yes," I replied. Noting the evident embarrassment of White, I did not introduce myself or companion, but simply remarked, "We're campers, and we wish to inquire the way to the nearest town, that we might replenish our food supply." "I myself used to live in the north," proceeded Mr. Edson, evading my question, "and I assume that anyone from there is a welcome visitor. Just step up to the porch, gentlemen. Boston, you and Samuel can have your dinner here with the servants, and then you can go to work in the clearing." Samuel's eyes danced at the mention of dinner, and he turned 2 handsprings in the direction of the kitchen before he noticed that Uncle Boston was being detained. "Boston," said Mr. Edson severely, "how was the bark peeled off these orange trees? It looks as if someone had driven through the yard with a wagon, and the hub had struck the trees." "Dat jeth what it looketh," said Uncle Boston, nodding his head emphatically. "Yes," continued Mr. Edson, looking down at the ground, "here are buggy tracks." "Dat the track of a buggy, sure enough." "These are the tracks of the horse. Rather large tracks. Must have been a large horse. It couldn't have been old man Hopkins' horse." "Couldn't have been," echoed Boston. "I'll tell you, Boston. I believe it was Squire White and his gray mare." "Dat who done it, for sure," exclaimed Uncle Boston, striking his thigh and speaking with such assurance as to cause Mr. Edson to look up in surprise. "Did you see him, Boston?" "No, sah, but dat am who surely done it. He done taught we all not know." And Boston went off into a series of chuckles from which he did not recover until Mr. Edson had ordered him back to the servants' apartments. "It is rather unusual that anyone should drive in any sort of vehicle through here," remarked Mr. Edson, when we all 3 had seated ourselves upon the piazza. "But if it was Squire White, I believe his action was for spite. You see, the squire lives alone upon the next plantation, and a very common condition in Florida is illustrated by our 2 plantations. My soil is, for the most part, rich hummock land, while his, though adjacent to mine, is all but worthless upland. It usually happens that the northerner buys the upland, either sight unseen or upon the recommendation of some real estate dealer. In this case, the tables are turned. Squire White lost all of his property soon after the Civil War, and he has not yet obtained sufficient funds to make much outlay in real estate. He bought this land, 200 acres in all, at an auction where it was sold for taxes. He has built himself a very snug little home from timber cut on his place, and combined with his pettifogging, he does a little market gardening, so that he is not in want. We have continued to be very good neighbors until about a month ago. Just about a month ago, when I was in the city, I saw some magazines which I thought the squire would like. I made arrangements to have them sent regularly to his address. This I did because I pitied his loneliness and wished, as you understand, to do him a real service. He went to the city and found out who sent the magazines, and I shall never forget in what a frenzy he rode up to my door that evening. I verily believe that if he had been armed, he'd have shot me dead. He took it as an insult to his family name that I should parade his indignance before a stranger in a distant city. Said he, I may have the misfortune, sir, to be poor as far as money is concerned, but I'd have you understand that the best blood of the South flows in my veins." Then, before I realized what he was about, he was naming with evident pride his ancestry through the Lees back to Washington. My seeming indifference to the efficacy of such an argument angered him still more, and in spite of my repeated assurances that I meant no offense, he has ever since shown me how obnoxious one neighbor can be to another. I sent Boston with a note the other day requesting the return of some borrowed garden implements which I needed greatly. The squire threw an axe at him and bade him never appear on his premises again, on peril of his life. This barking of my choice orange trees is something of which I was not aware until just now. It must have been done last night. I beg your pardon, gentlemen, for thus introducing you at once into an altercation, but I confess that I am somewhat vexed by this last token of my neighbor's displeasure." "I'm very sure, sir," said Stanton, speaking with dignity, "that we wish for an early and happy settlement of so unfortunate a misunderstanding. I am not surprised, however, at your tale, for I have spent some little time in the South and could tell you many a similar story. To be frank, I believe that Southern pride can be wounded much more easily now than several years ago, because the Southerner is likely to attribute the slights he now receives to his misfortunes in and following the great civil struggle. I feel that the South has suffered much, perhaps more than we can ever realize, and I believe that we should exercise the utmost of patience and charity toward its people. The wounded bodies of the boys in gray have long since healed, not so their wounded pride. Some of them have drifted from a sense of definite injury to a state of morbid sensitiveness, which will require the most delicate handling. The South has begun to learn, however, that family name and distinguished ancestry will not answer for hard work and genuine worth in democratic America." "Your words reveal a better understanding of Southern life than your youthfulness would lead me to expect. I am glad that your more mature judgment has led you to share my views. Seeing your interest in this subject, I'd like to inquire what you think ought to be done with the American Negro." "Well, well," said our host, looking amused, "I had no idea that my acquiescence to what you just said would lay upon me the burden of answering a question that is engrossing the time and skill of our leading educators, philanthropists, and statesmen. I fear that I'd have to ask that you first state your question a little differently. I feel that what we are going to do with the American Negro is not so pertinent as what we are going to do for him, and what he is going to do for himself. He is here. He has become a permanent part of our population. The question is not of deportation, but of uplift. I see, however, that we shall not have time to discuss this matter further, for here come my little girls to remind us that the dinner hour has arrived." Stanton and I glanced up to see not the small maidens whom we had anticipated seeing, but two tall, beautiful girls, followed by the inevitable small brother. "I must beg your pardon, gentlemen. I have not yet learned your names. So interested have I been in discussing other matters with you." "My name is Stanton White, and this is Harold Edson." "Indeed! Why, Mr. Edson, why didn't you write me that you were coming? Afraid you'd disappoint me the second time, were you? Well, I'm glad you've come. Both of you are most welcome. Mr. Edson and Mr. White, this is my daughter, Miss Irma." The taller one of the two, a blonde with expressive blue eyes, advanced and cordially greeted us. "And this is my second daughter, Miss Zoe," continued our host, as a vivacious brunette smilingly accosted us. So captivating were the smiles that I scarcely noticed little Alan, a lad of 6, clad in a linen sailor suit, and his fair face wreathed in a wealth of yellow ringlets. The lad, however, seemed to unconsciously win his way into our hearts, and in a moment He had taken my hand and was explaining all about his pets and plans. Without delay, we were ushered into the dining room and were seated to a sumptuous repast. "You see, my little girls have to act as housekeepers since their mother was taken away 5 years ago. Irma takes care of the house while Zoe plans the meals. Of course, they have help. Uncle Boston's nephew has a little house in the rear, and the whole tribe of Bostons help with the heavy work." Although I could not recall much of the table conversation, for a part in which I seemed to have no time, so good did the roast chicken and sweet potatoes taste after our camping experience, I remembered afterward that it was both refined and engaging. The girls were evidently well informed, and the little lad was crammed full of amusing expressions and affectionate ways. Even the cook showed the special favor in which Alan was held by sending him a little pie, which the child insisted upon dividing with everyone at the table. Dinner over, Mr. Edson conducted us to the library, while the girls busied themselves with the dishes. I was not entirely prepared to see such a library. Shelf rose above shelf along one whole side of the room. The best classic literature and many books of reference were there. A set of textbooks, such as might have been in use in the best colleges 25 years before, occupied one section of the library. I opened one of them, and on the flyleaf read, "Silas P. Edson, Yale, 18 " "Quite a while since you were at Yale," I said more to myself than to my host. "It seems but a few years ago when I was playing the old Rugby game," he faltered in a disquieted fashion. He lit a cigar and puffed at it nervously for a moment, then threw it aside and excused himself from the room. "Evidently," said White, "his remembrance of college days is not so pleasant as ours." Mr. Edson returned in a few moments, and during the remainder of the afternoon he proved himself so companionable that it was nearly sunset when we became aware of the flight of time. Then the two young ladies appeared clad in white, and proposed that we all should go for a row upon the neighboring bayou. This invitation we were not loath to accept, and loosing a little skiff from beneath a gnarled cottonwood tree, we rowed leisurely down the little bayou until it expanded into a dark, shadowy lagoon, on whose shores I recognized our former camping place. Then back we came just as darkness wrapped us in her embrace. After supper, we formed so merry a group upon the piazza that White seemed to forget that he had objected to being the guest of an unknown man. With laughter, jest, and song, the evening sped quickly. Not a suggestion was there of that coldness which fell upon another group one moonlight evening not long before. End of Chapter 10. Read by James K. White. Chula Vista.